justice, justice for all, justice under the law, justice the people demand, right to life and security. Oh, what a joy, oh, what a peace, how great this country could be, respecting your rights, respecting human rights. What a wonderful nation this could be.
Good afternoon and welcome to Let's Talk Justice. We are joined today by Mr. Patrick Layla from the Jamaica Aid Support for Life and also Ms. Carleen McCallum from Jamaicans for Justice. So this is a special episode this week. We are focused on investigating the links between gender-based violence and financial and technological obstacles to women's empowerment. As you can see, I'm alone on the feed. We are not joined by Mikkel today. She's away on work-related travels, so I am carrying the mantle, so you can leave your reviews for her to see when she comes back. So as I said, we're joined by Patrick Layla. Patrick, say hello to my viewers.
Afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here with you this afternoon.
And we also have with us Carleen. And Carleen, what do you do at JFJ?
Hi, good afternoon, listeners. My name is Carleen McCallum. I'm a legal officer at Jamaicans for Justice.
Right. So as I said, we're talking about the links between GBV and the financial and technological obstacles to women's empowerment. And this is a topical thing for us to discuss today as we are on the eve of International Women's Day, which is normally observed on March 8th. So we would have saved this segment in the show to do our Human Rights of the Week, but since we are doing a special week this week, I'm just going to go over some of the historical context of International Women's Day. So International Women's Day first emerged in the early 1900s and the first Women's Day came into existence in 1909. So it was initially celebrated in February, on the 28th of February, following a 15,000 woman march in New York demanding better working conditions for those women that were in the workforce as well as their voting rights. Simultaneously in Europe, there would have been held the Second International Conference of Working Women, after which it was agreed that International Women's Day would be observed on March 9th, 1911. And the first day was honored for the first time in Austria, Denmark, Switzerland, and Germany. The United Nations has started celebrating it since 1977. So we can assume that Jamaica would have been celebrating it at a similar time as the United Nations. I don't know if either of our guests have any historical recollection of celebrations of International Women's Day in Jamaica in the past.
None for me.
As far back as I can recall, it is the ministry, well, before we even had a ministry with the gender component specifically, emphasized. The Bureau of Gender Affairs has been around for some time, and as far back as I can remember, it is a day when they normally have something significant to commemorate the day.
Okay. All right. So with that said, we are going to have our Human Rights of the Day, which is... Okay, I see we're having a technical difficulty. Okay, it's up. Okay. So our Human Rights of the Day is coming from Article 7 of the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Patrick, if you could assist me with explaining this to the audience.
The state parties to the present covenant recognize the right of everyone to the enjoyment of just and favorable conditions of work that ensure in particular remuneration that provides all workers as a minimum with fair wages and equal remuneration for work of equal value without distinction of any kind, with women being guaranteed conditions of work that are not inferior to those enjoyed by men with equal pay for equal work. So this article in the convention is basically ensuring that men and women in the workplace, as we know it, have equal rights in terms of their working conditions, the way they are paid, and the provisions made in the workplace for them. Jamaica has moved to put it into legislation somewhat, because we have an Equal Pay for Men and Women Act here in Jamaica that ensures that there is equal remuneration for equal work. But I am sure there are still some disparities in promotions and leaderships, and it has changed in the last 2 decades. But, the board chairmen and the CEOs are still predominantly men. Even though the stats is showing that the UE graduates are predominantly women. So I'm not quite sure how that adds up, but we'll see.
Okay, that's interesting. So I think right now we can do our trivia question for the week. So you are reminded that you win a free phone credit from the network of your choice. I'm not going to say what the amount is. It will be a surprise. So the question for this week is, which of the following is a potential impact of gender-based violence? So A, psychological disorders, B, unsafe abortions, C, social stigma, or D, all of the above. So the correct answer, you can send your response to our social media pages, and you can also WhatsApp us. Oh, okay. So you can just send your response to our social media pages. So we're on Instagram and we're on Twitter. It appears there's some technical issues with our WhatsApp right now. So please feel free to also send any questions or comments that you have throughout the show to our social media WhatsApp or social media DMs, or to the studio line. You can give us a call at 876-676-4996. Okay. So we're going to go into our initial part of the discussion. So on March 8th, the world recognizes International Women's Day, which acts as a focal point for the women's rights movement and raises awareness of problems including gender equality, reproductive rights, and violence and abuse against women.
According to the 2018 National Prevalence Study, over 1/3 of all women in the country, that is 27.8%, had suffered gender-based violence. This information also demonstrates that the nation is a GBV hotspot.
It must be noted that gender-based violence affects everyone. However, women and girls are largely affected. Violence against women and girls can be committed physically, verbally, and or emotionally, and it is typically committed by an individual that is known to them or their intimate partner or family member, and is normally hidden from the public eye. Gender-based violence can also be encouraged through societal norms and values which are ingrained in social structures, cultural expectations, and shared ideals.
The main aim of the 2017 Jamaica National Action Plan to reduce gender-based violence is to reduce the number of high-priority areas, including enforcement, protection, prosecution, and prevention. But have these aims been achieved? Is there a downward trend in the numbers? What are the loopholes in our legislation? And what level of support is provided by Jamaicans for Justice to victims?
Okay, so as I said, we are joined by Ms. Caroline McCallum from Jamaicans for Justice. And of course, I will be drilling Patrick as well on his expertise in this area as we continue this discussion. So first things first, and I think I'll ask this to Carleen, is what is gender-based violence? When we say gender-based violence, what are we talking about?
Okay, so gender-based violence, and GBV for short. So from time to time you hear that acronym being thrown about, GBV. What is GBV? Well, GBV is actually an umbrella term for violence directed towards or disproportionately affecting someone because of their biological sex or their actual or perceived gender identity.
Okay, so that's kind of complicated for me. Okay, so when you say, biological sex I get,
Yes.
so that basically means male or female.
Male or female.
All right.
Yes.
But when you say gender identity or perceived gender identity.
Gender identity. Well, people identify sometimes not based on their biological sex that were born with. But for example, somebody might be born and born as a male or as a man, but their gender identity is female. Okay, and if they're abused because of that, then that falls into the category of gender-based violence. And we said that you're disproportionately affected, and whenever we speak about persons being disproportionately affected, we say women are disproportionately affected by gender-based violence than men. So whenever the question or whenever the discussion comes up, men are always saying, but men are abused too, and men face gender-based violence. But the statistic for that does not indicate that they are disproportionately affected. Who are disproportionately affected are women and girls, and that is why the conversation around gender-based violence usually focuses on women and girls.
Okay, so I have a question about the statistic, but before I go there, what's the difference between domestic violence and gender-based violence?
Well, as I said in the definition, gender-based violence is an umbrella term. So under that, you can have domestic violence as one of the forms of violence occurring in a domestic space. Okay, there is also intimate partner violence, and there's also sexual violence. So all of those fall under the umbrella definition of gender-based violence.
Okay, so I would ask you then about the statistics. You are saying basically that the data is showing that it affects women more.
Yes.
One thing I have heard is that men don't report instances of what may be considered gender-based violence. Could that be affecting the statistics?
Yes, it could be. And our sociocultural norms might be what is affecting men and stopping them from reporting, because sometimes, when men go to report, they get ridiculed and so on. Or they're even ridiculed by their peers to say that they're being beaten, for example, by their female partner. So men are less likely to report or to speak about it openly the way women will do.
Well, Patrick, we don't normally have a man in here. Is that true?
Well, the data is showing that, just last week I was in a room full of men doing a GBV session. And I know the listeners remember Carlene said, you hear us saying GBV, gender-based violence. And it was interesting that maybe more than 50% of the room, when we started to define gender-based violence and to look at the different forms it takes, they were saying, well, I've experienced that. My woman did that to me, but, man, not really go to police station and report things like those. You just deal with it. So the data can't go wrong. Women are definitely more disproportionately affected, but we must understand that men are affected too. And maybe if everybody had equal opportunity to report without being ridiculed, as Carlene said, maybe we'd get a better picture of what the data is. But the reality is, we are talking about gender-based violence distinctly from violence against women, with the understanding that under this broader umbrella, men are affected as well.
All right. Well, thank you for that. We're going to pick up the conversation right after the break.
The people's champion. Our mission is love. Our vision is love. Jamaicans for justice. The people's champion.
The future of advertising to the diaspora and Caribbean markets resides only on the bridge. Get on now. 876-669-5000.
Chasing purpose is a journey of self-love, self-development, healing, and spirituality.
When you feel like giving up,
Our talk show aims to empower, inspire, and uplift through thought-provoking conversations. Guided by our 4 pillars: nurturing faith, setting intentions, pursuing aspirations, all while we are living boldly.
Every time I feel can't do no different. Swear me off a win.
Won't you join us Wednesday, 10 a.m. to midday for Chasing Purpose, where we sow seeds others will benefit
That's
from.
why I'ma try again.
Rights we should all know. If any member of the security force hits you, abuses you, refuses to give you your phone call, or otherwise violates your rights, complain to the police on duty, the JP who visits the lockup, the public defender, the inspectorate of constabulary, or the police at the station. With every right, there is a responsibility.
Brought to you by the Office of the Public Defender.
Don't watch no face. Just tune in to the Bridge 99 FM. At this right there.
The people's champion. Our mission is love. Our vision is love. Jamaicans, for justice. The people's champion.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We are talking today about investigating the links between GBV and financial and technological obstacles to women's empowerment. And we are joined by Carleen McCallum from Jamaicans for Justice. Patrick, I know you had something burning to ask before.
Yes, I heard Carleen throwing around the statistics. What are we seeing in terms of the data? How we say women are disproportionately affected? What do the numbers look like? Share some of that with us.
Okay. Well, firstly, let me make it clear that GBV is not just a Jamaican problem. Mm-hmm. It's an international problem. And internationally, the statistic is 1 in 3 women are affected by this form of violence, by the gender-based violence. And in terms of our local situation, the statistic is 1 in 4. So we're saying 1 out of 4 of every woman in Jamaica is affected by domestic violence at some point in her life experience.
So if I'm to interpret that, it simply means of every 20 women I pass for the day, 5 of them,
Yes.
Okay, so
by virtue of the data, may likely have
experienced violence in this way.
Okay, so you're saying adding 2 more people to this room. At least 1.
Yes, that's the statistic.
So,
Yes.
tell me, Carleen, are we prepared to deal with this legally? What do we have in place if it is so prevalent?
Well, of course, there is a legal framework to address gender-based violence and the more common form, domestic violence, here in Jamaica. There are several pieces of legislation that are geared towards dealing with domestic violence or dealing with violence in general. And I'm not going to mention, I'm not going to speak specifically to the Domestic Violence Act right now. I'm just going to give you a list of the legislation that impact domestic violence or gender-based violence in some ways. And of course, we're going to speak about our Charter of Rights because, of course, gender-based violence is a human rights violation. Mm-hmm. Okay? Freedom from violence is a fundamental human right. And everybody should be free from violence of any sort. And certainly, women should be free from domestic violence. Okay, so we have, first of all, our Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms. We have the Sexual Offences Act. We have the Domestic Violence Act, Offences Against the Person Act, the Property Rights of Spouses Act. That's the one commonly referred to as PROSA. Mm-hmm. We also have the Maintenance Act. And of course, in terms of other strategic policies and plans, we have Vision 2030, we have the National Policy on Gender Equality, and we have the National Strategic Plan to Eliminate Gender-Based Violence in Jamaica 2016 to 2026. So we have a legal framework all set out to deal with domestic violence here in Jamaica, or gender-based violence for that matter. Now, specifically, we have the Domestic Violence Act that deals with specific domestic issues. Now, under this act, there are two. Well, first of all, let me mention that the family court has jurisdiction over this act. Okay? So if you're affected by violence in any way, and by violence we mean it could be physical, it could be stalking, harassing on the telephone, whatever it is in that way. Okay? If you need, for example, a protection order from somebody, that's the court that you approach. Okay? In the corporate area here in Kingston, we have the family court at Duke Street, separate from it's at the parish court level, but it has a separate court building and so on. In the rural parishes, your family court might very well be in your parish court building.
Okay, so I'm hearing a lot of things that I think we need to dig into. So firstly, you said family court. So that's a civil jurisdiction.
Yes.
So this is not a criminalized
no, it is not. It is not criminalized. But so far as criminal actions might have been perpetrated against you, the criminal law is there, and that's why I make sure to go through the list of legislation. Because if you're beaten, that's an assault.
Okay.
So you can go to the police station, report it. The person could be arrested, and that is now a criminal matter under the Offences Against the Persons Act. So the criminal law is also there to offer some protection in the sphere of gender-based or domestic violence.
Okay.
I want to, before you go, Jade, I want Colin to clarify two things. So, from one matter, can both be operating at the same time? Could this person be in the civil division of the court pursuing something, trying to get a protection order or something, and then there is also a criminal act charge flowing from the same incident?
Yes.
That is possible.
So if you're beaten up as a woman, you're beaten up by your spouse or man, because as we say, the act covers everybody. Okay? So you're beaten up, you're assaulted. Okay? It can be a criminal, well, it is a criminal matter to be assaulted. So that part can be going on in the criminal court, the criminal jurisdiction of the parish court. And you want a protection order against the person who has perpetrated the act against you. That would fall under the Domestic Violence Act, and the family court, which is a part of the parish court system, it would have jurisdiction. So you'd have two matters going on simultaneously.
But we're talking about violence, and I heard earlier you said, so for example, if someone is stalking you, I thought we were talking about violence. How does that come in?
Yeah. I was going to ask the stalking question as well.
Well, if somebody is besetting you and so on, in terms of that, you would need protection from the person, right? That's what you would need. So you would need this person to leave you alone, so to speak. So it's a protection order that you would approach the court for. Now, in terms of, you have a question, Jade?
Yes, because I wanted to say, does the order apply if the stalking is only via text, is only online, or can you only get it if you're being physically stalked?
Let me rock my mind to see how it works.
You know, I asked because I remember one of the challenges to the act when it was being briefly reviewed amongst those other acts was that it wasn't sufficient in terms of that online protection piece.
Yes, and there are some amendments to the act that are coming before the court, that are coming before Parliament shortly to be looked at. Okay. And that is one of the issues that is being dealt with. So coming out of that, we're hoping that it can be crystal clear as to how stalking will be treated under the Act.
Okay. So, you know, well, I do want to talk to you more about the amendments, because we were at the same meeting where they spoke about some of the things approved by the cabinet. But I wanted to ask, what does the protection order protect you from? Like, is it that it only protects you from the person entering your home, or from, like, what does it give you if one is awarded?
Well, if one is awarded, it protects you from that person basically besetting you. So it can be for the person not to approach you in your house, at your workplace, at your place of, socializing or whatever. So it protects you from that.
Okay, so if we went to the same gym, and I am now taking out a protection order against this person, it can say that they cannot go to this gym as long as the order is in place? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That's interrupting. Fluffy. But Colin, back to so you are saying, what I wanted to establish, you are saying stalking is violent. Because I was thinking, nobody punch you, kick you. You just broaden the definition of the forms gender-based violence can take there from.
Well,
so
but
I
yes,
want to understand it's not just physical.
Violent. No, it doesn't have to be physical violence, because even one of the issues that was dealt with in the revision of the act, in the review of the act, is economic or financial violence, really, withholding money for support for that spouse, for that person. That is seen as, or it can be qualified as domestic violence under the Act, okay? Because you are essentially withholding support from somebody who probably cannot support themselves. So that falls under it. So you have sexual violence, you have physical abuse, you have, as I said, the act is seeking to recognize that kind of abuse, economic abuse, and so on. So it doesn't have to be somebody punching you, beating you with a piece of stick. Right. Okay? There are other forms of abuse that are recognized under the act.
So the emotional and the psychological.
The emotional and the psychological and all of that, those are also recognized.
Interesting.
So I wonder, I know that in your role as a legal officer, you do deal with quite a few gender-based violence cases. I do want to ask you about some of your experience. Like, what in your experience, what is the most prevalent form of violence that you're seeing being reported? Is it physical, emotional, financial?
Physical, I would say physical. The physical altercation, yes, that is probably the most prevalent. So flowing from that, usually there's a need for the protection order. Sometimes the occupation order. We hadn't spoken about the occupation order, so I'm going to bring it up.
Yes, just give me a brief definition right before we take our next break.
The protection or the occupation order is for a victim of gender-based violence to exclude the perpetrator of that violence from a premises, okay, from the household, whether that person's name is on the title or not. That person can be excluded from the household pending further court action.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to just take a pause here, and we're going to take the break, and we'll be right back.
Our mission is love. Our vision is love. Jamaicans, for justice. The people's champion.
We still a do it big, big, big. KFC still a do it big. KFC Big Deal. The time by KFC Big Deal is
1:30.
Out of many, we are one. One Jamaica on the Bridge 99 FM.
The future of advertising to the diaspora and Caribbean markets resides only on the Bridge. Get on now. 876-669-5000.
Still I do it big, big, big. Work hard every day with determination. Anything you set your mind into, you do it big. KFC still I do it big. KFC Big Deal. Enjoy 3 pieces of delicious chicken, fries, and a Pepsi. Because big dreamers need a big deal.
Yeah, this is Angie from Gardertown. In the square, right at Miss Lou's statue. Come check out Kentucky Drinking Salon with the top shelf liquor them. See them like how you see the Bridge 99 FM to the world.
mission is love. Our vision is love. Jamaicans, for justice, the people's champion. Justice. I'm Patrick Layla here, sitting in with Jade today for Michael, who has left us, but she'll be back next week. And we are talking about gender-based violence, and we are looking at the impact on women. We have not touched the financial and technological obstacles much yet, but we'll be going there in this segment of the program. So when we left, Carleen just cleared up for us the fact that gender-based violence is way more than just the physical that we are accustomed to. So I'm hoping listeners out there listening that it can take other forms, and if you see this happening, you can step forward to get help. I'll ensure that Carleen outlined the steps, what you should do. But what do we think? We have not discussed much the causes. What are the factors that contribute to gender-based violence, which we are saying is so prevalent?
Okay. Well, some of the factors that contribute to gender-based violence, we know that there are certain factors that put certain individuals in the path more than others. Mm-hmm. And one of them, we say that women with limited educational background or poor educational background, usually, because, there's this economic imbalance that affects the relationship between men and women. And when you are dependent on someone, sometimes it drives that, or it opens up that window for violence in the relationship. Now, another risk factor for it, they say that women or girls who start living with a male partner from an early stage in life. Mm-hmm. Okay, so for example, if you're a minor going into a relationship with a grown man, that's an imbalance right there of a relationship. You're a child, you're a minor in a relationship with an adult. So there is that power imbalance that also affects that intimate relationship and can eventually manifest itself in violence. Okay, so those are some of the factors that can lead to gender-based.
Thank you, Carleen. And as you mentioned, the disparity, for example, in the income. I wonder if you've seen anything like that where you sit at Jamaica is a Purple Life, Patrick.
Well, yes. While we have seen cases of gender-based violence across the board, all socioeconomic backgrounds, there's always that greater possibility of persons from the lower socioeconomic backgrounds to be more prone to gender-based violence because of the great financial disparity. But there's also that power struggle that is always at the center of these acts of violence, which is really, it's always persons who are trying to show that I'm in charge, I have the power here. So whether the power is exerted through the control of the finances, the control of the person, where they can go, how they go, when they go, and all of that. And even in my own personal work, we see where gender-based violence is one of the factors that prohibit persons who have as simple as a clinic appointment to come forward because they are living with a perpetrator who dictates when they are allowed to leave the house. There's that power struggle. And in many instances, a perpetrator who is not privy to the reason they have a clinic appointment, and as such, they are not in a position to disclose, and they continue to experience violence. So it opens them up to all of the various effects of violence, but it also prevents them from taking care of themselves.
Okay, so, as we talk about this prevalence question, one of the things that comes to mind is the continuous inquiry. Why don't they just leave? Or why can't you just find somewhere else to be? So what would you say? And I'll ask you both. And I'll start with Carleen. What would you say in response to that?
People do not leave for various reasons. We mentioned economic dependence. Sometimes the victim is not in a position to leave. Sometimes children are involved, and you can't just walk away with your children just so if you're not able to take care of them. So that's a major reason, the economic dependence on the perpetrator, as one of the reasons why persons don't just walk away. Of course, yesterday we were at a function where the anecdotal issue arose where persons were saying some women believe that if their man is not beating them, that he doesn't love them. So some persons see the abuse or the beating, as a form of expression of care and love for them.
So that's kind of a cultural issue.
It's kind of a cultural issue that I would assume that we need to address it in some way for persons to realize that somebody beating up on you every day or every 2 weeks, that can't be an expression of love. That's abuse. So those are some of the things we need to address.
So Patrick, do you see anything different or?
Well, what I'll say, the two key reasons that I see in my experience are what we call the everyday bread and butter issues. People need to eat, children need to be fed, children need to go to school, and that is generally in those instances covered by the perpetrator. And the first question is, if I leave them, where will I live? How will the children eat? How will the children go to school? And that is one of the things that cause a lot of women, in particular, to stay in these violent relationships just because they want to ensure that their children is cared for. But on the second level, there are some psychological factors, and here we can talk about, like, for example, the Stockholm syndrome, which is what I think people don't fully understand when you hear that someone says, well, if he doesn't love her, if it's because he loves her, he beats her. It's the Stockholm syndrome, and this is a proven psychological situation where the abused becomes endeared to the abuser. So it's almost like I can't live without him, because a lot of the emotional and the psychological abuse that they have been through, their self-worth is also significantly affected. So they are in a relationship where they're hearing day after day, well, if I leave you, nobody else will want you. And they begin to believe that. And they begin to develop a level of dependency on the abuser. So instead of leaving, so that will explain sometimes. Next time you think about that friend, you remember you went down the house and helped her pack up her bags and go up her auntie up the road, and 2 weeks later, you hear that something happening down the road, and when you look, it's Mary, who you moved 2 weeks ago, back in the abuser's house, and you tend to think, she just worthless and she don't want any good, and you are almost inclined to turn your back on her. There's much more happening in our mind, and we have to be patient with and provide the continuous support for persons in situations like this.
Okay, so that situation that you're describing is very familiar. So a lot of the times we'll get the report, and the victim, the reporter, is not in the frame of mind, like the mental space, in order to seek the appropriate redress for themselves. And well, I've experienced it. I don't know about you, Caroline.
Yeah, I have sometimes, because at Jamaicans for Justice, we offer legal support to these victims or /survivors. And sometimes when they come to us, they get referred to us sometimes for legal support. That means that we're now ready to get into the court system to seek redress. But in 2 days' time, you'll be trying to call them to talk to them, and they're not taking the call. Or even if you get through to them, they'll say, I'm not ready yet. I don't want to go to court as yet, for whatever reason. Now, at this point, sometimes what we have to do is to refer them to one of our partners for counseling. Okay? To refer them back, even to the same partner that referred them to us. We have to refer them back to say, look, this person thought she was ready, but she's not ready. So she probably need to take part in a few more counseling sessions and so on to see if she will get to that point where she wants to take legal action or not.
Okay, so as you said that, though, I am very curious. What kind of legal support can JFJ offer to a person who makes a report like that?
Okay. Well, representation in court. We spoke about the application for the occupation order, for the protection order, and so on. So we can make those applications on behalf of the victims. Also, attendant to those things, especially where children are involved, there becomes a case of custody, maintenance, and so on. So we can also represent these victims to seek these orders from the court in terms of their children, because most times when women are leaving these abusive situations, they don't want to leave their children behind, because sometimes the children themselves are being abused by the perpetrator sometimes. So they want to take the children, so they want to have the official court order to say that they have custody of the child or children, and of course they also need that financial support also from the perpetrator, who is the father of the child or whatever. So they want the custody and maintenance order also, and at JFJ we assist in those regards.
Okay.
What does this cost? This sounds like an expensive venture.
No cost. It is free of charge.
None at all?
No charge. Absolutely no charge.
So I ask, so in terms of the support that you provide, when it is on the criminal side, because what you just described would have been like going to the family court process. Right. So when it is on the criminal side, what, if anything, can be done?
On a criminal matter is brought by the state against the person committing so the prosecutor in that instance would be the clerk of the court. So there's not much that we can do in terms of representing the person at that point. But what we do, we offer what we call a support system for the person in court, a buddy system, so to speak. So we go to court with the person, because people are very intimidated by the legal system, and especially somebody who has been abused already, very intimidated by the system. So we go to court with them, explain the process, whatever needs to be explained, whatever they don't understand, we explain to them, so on and so forth, so they can understand the process and what it means. So we act as a buddy, as a friend, going to court, accompanying them to court, and so on and so forth.
Okay, sounds like a pretty useful service.
It's appreciated by those who we have. Free of cost.
Free of cost.
It's appreciated.
That's the thing. So, Caroline, what else is you spoke of some amendments that you heard at a meeting. Now, I'm a skeptic here. So, and since I've been around for some time hearing about amendments to come, and I've not seen much coming, how confident are you, based on what you see, that these amendments are actually coming, and what greater protection will they now provide for persons who are experiencing gender-based violence?
Okay. Well, in terms of the amendment, because in terms of persons who can apply for the protection order, they're widening. The amendment should widen, or what is proposed to be the amendment is to widen the category of persons who can apply for a protection order.
Good.
I could give you an example of persons who can't apply. And this is a true story I'm going to tell you. A complaint that came into JFJ. A lady called. She lives with her sister and I share a home. The sister's boyfriend is abusive. He's abusive to the sister, he's abusive to her, the complainant. But when she approached the court for a protection order against him, she couldn't get the order.
Right.
Why? He didn't live there. He didn't live in the household. He just came to the household.
And it's under the Domestic Violence
And it's under the Domestic Violence Act. And they weren't intimate partners. It was a sister who was the partner of the gentleman.
So okay, is that a visiting relationship?
No. She wasn't the one in the visiting relationship.
Yes.
She wasn't the one in the visiting relationship.
Right.
So it's the sister-in-law of the man, so to speak, who he beat upon and whatever and was abusing, but she couldn't get a protection order against him. So the only redress for her at the time was to go under the criminal law for assault. Okay, and that matter is actually before the court. The assault matter.
I'm going to stop you guys right there. Very interesting story Carlene is telling us now, but we're going to take the break and we'll be right back.
the people's champion. Our mission is love, our vision is love. Jamaicans for justice, the people's champion.
Hi, I'm Ronald Thwaites, and I'm the host of The Public Eye and The Open Mind on the Bridge 99 and Irie Jam in the tri-state area. This program will tell you the truth about life backyard. Fair, open talk, no gossip, no slander. We want to listen to your concerns, also want to help you with your problems in JA. We at The Bridge rate you and affirm our oneness as citizens of this blessed land we love. So join us now on Wednesdays on The Bridge, crossing the waters, linking Jamaicans and Jamaican lovers everywhere.
Imagine your advertising dollar reaching your Caribbean and diaspora target beyond borders in a single rotation. It happens only on The Bridge. Call now to advertise 876-669-5000.
Rights we should all know.
Know your rights. Protect and preserve your rights. Protect and preserve your children's rights, your family's rights, and the rights of others. Do not break the law. Doing so is to compromise and possibly give away some of your rights. With every right, there is a responsibility.
Brought to you by the Office of the Public Defender.
KFC, we still do it big, big, big. KFC. Work hard every day with determination. Anything you set your mind to, you do it big. No underestimate your potential. You a real big deal and you must win.
SPIC in your area. KFC with the taste and the flavor. We a big deal, so adapt we are hard and we do big things with no
KFC still are doing it big. KFC Big Deal. Enjoy 3 pieces of delicious chicken, fries, and a Pepsi. Because big dreamers need a big deal.
Yeah, this is Angie from Gardentown. In the square, right at Miss Lou's statue. Come check out Kentucky Drinking Salon. With the top shelf liquor them. See them like how you see the bridge. 99 FM to the world.
The people's champion. Our mission is love, our vision is love. Jamaicans for justice, the people's champion.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We're having a discussion today around gender-based violence in anticipation for the observance of International Women's Day tomorrow, March 8th. We are joined by Caroline McCallum from Jamaicans for Justice and my special co-host for this week, Patrick Layla from Jamaica Aid Support for Life. Just before we took the break, Caroline was giving us what I heard were cabinet-approved amendments to the Domestic Violence Act.
Yes, and a major one that I want to mention, or even before I mention it, let me speak about the breach of the act, of the order. So if a protection order is enforced and the abuser may be arrested without a warrant if that order is breached. Okay?
And that's effective.
And that's in effect. Okay? What is also in effect is that that person can be asked by the court to pay a fine of $10,000, or that person could be imprisoned for a period not exceeding 6 months.
10,000 US?
10,000 Jamaican dollars, or both.
But
going back to the amendment now to the act, one of the amendment is going to address that paltry amount, Patrick, that $10,000. In the amendment, the suggestion is for that amount to be increased to $1 million. And that is being considered to act as a deterrent to persons breaching the protection order when one is put in place by the court.
That's quite a jump.
So it is quite a jump, and let us see if it's going to be approved. Okay? So that would be putting some bite into the Domestic Violence Act as it stands.
Okay, thank you for that very important information, Caroline, about possible upcoming amendments to the Domestic Violence Act. So I wanted to ask, if I suspect that I might have a friend or family member who is experiencing gender-based violence, what should I be looking for? Like, what would inform me that this is gender-based violence?
Okay. Well, there are some warning signs that persons can look out for. Both persons who are in relationships and family members looking on. And some of these signs include extreme jealousy. That partner who is extremely jealous, keep an eye on. Possessiveness, unpredictability in behavior, bad temper, cruelty to animal, verbal abuse, extremely controlling behavior, outdated or antiquated beliefs about the roles of men and women in relationship. These are some of the warning signs that you can look out for, because most persons who are perpetrators of this form of violence usually exhibit one or more of these characteristics.
The outdated or antiquated beliefs about men and women, Carleen, I wanted to touch that a little. This gentleman in the relationship is a Christian man who believes that the Bible says the man is the head of the house, hence the woman should be quiet and listen to what he says and do what he says. And is that outdated and antiquated?
Well, in our present society, yes. You know, and we have to go back to the fact that not everybody is a Christian. You say this man is a Christian, but this is where that tension can come in sometimes, because the church might be telling you one thing, but the social reality and life at home might require for you to demonstrate something different. Right. Because not by virtue of the fact that you're a man doesn't mean that you're a leader, or it doesn't mean that you have to be the one making every decision about the household. And sometimes this can create tension within the relationship and within the home, you know. So these what I refer to as outdated modes of what is the gender roles, right. You know, because some men believe that they're not supposed to take part in domestic chores and all of that, and leave the burden of domestic chores and child rearing on the woman, and sometimes that becomes problematic in the relationship between them. So these are some of the things that are causing that push and pull within some of these domestic situations.
Okay, glad you cleared that up.
When Patrick gave that supposition to the church, it just reminded me that a lot of things on the list are just cultural norms, or when they're displayed, they're cultural norms. Okay, so we are running out of time, and I wouldn't want us to not speak to any of the comments that we would have gotten from our audience. So these comments came in on Instagram, and Carleen, you're going to be put on the spot right now for your legal expertise. I like to pretend I don't have any when you're around.
Remember the disclaimer.
Okay, so this is coming in from someone listening. My boyfriend beat me up. I was pregnant for him. He punched me in my stomach. I'm kind of Englishizing this because it's in Jamaican English. And I lost my baby. What should I do? So what can she do? So she was pregnant. She got beaten up by her boyfriend, and unfortunately, her baby was lost in the process.
Well, the beat up, that's a criminal offense. That's an assault on her, and she should have reported it to the police.
Is there a limit on the time that you can report an assault?
No, there is no limit on a criminal offense. On a criminal offense.
Okay.
So she could still approach the police on this matter. And are they still together, did she say?
No, she didn't.
She didn't say. Well, if they're not still together and he's harassing her in any way, shape, or form, this is where she would need to apply to the family court, to the parish court, for a protection order.
So in that case, she could give us a call at JFK?
She could give us a call at Jamaicans for Justice.
Okay, awesome. All right, so the next comment I have, Patrick, I'll let you read this one.
No, go ahead and read it.
I live in a home with my boyfriend. He won't let me out of the house. I can't go anywhere without him. I can't even wash my own clothes. He won't even allow me to cook. He does everything I have. He has everything that I have, and I have to ask permission even to go into the living room. What should I do?
That sounds like Carleen's list that she just read out.
I'm looking at extreme controlling behavior. Extreme controlling behavior. That would fall under that category. Well, she would need, well, it's for her to decide what she's going to do, because I would think that she would need to get out of the situation. So she probably needs some counseling. You know, so we could refer her to one of our partners who provide counseling to see, and the counseling can be offered online too, because some of these partners, they do offer online counseling. So if she can't get out of the house and get away from him, well, I guess when he's gone to work, the same way she could have access to the phone to send this message, she could entertain a counseling session with one of our partners.
But can she go to the police, Carly?
She could go to the police
because he didn't beat her.
He didn't beat her. There's no physical violence involved, and that is why I directed her to the family court. The family court, that would be for protection order if she needed to get away from the situation and not have him be in her surroundings and so on. So the protection order could assist her in that way also.
Okay.
You know, as I hear these anecdotal or these reports, basically, that would have gotten in just now, is this something that you're seeing more often, like in your work? Is there more reports related to GBV or less over the time that you've been in this field?
There has been, well, the period we just came out of, the COVID period and the lockdown and so on, there was a bit of an increase in domestic violence. You know, persons locked up in the same space, so there was a little increase in that. Coming out of COVID now, we'll have to now wait to see what statistics are going to indicate in this post-COVID period. But domestic violence, it's prevalent in Jamaica. It's an issue, and we have to keep monitoring and addressing the issue, whether legally or through psychosocial support or in whatever way we can. We have to offer assistance to these victims or survivors, as we like to refer to them sometimes as.
All right. Wow. Okay, so it's been a fulsome discussion, but we do have some formalities to close out the show. We have 2 minutes. So I'll go ahead and say that we have a winner for trivia this week. That is Saji or Sagi. Azasaji. Okay, Azasaji. I've said that hopefully I'm getting that right, and our communications officer or producer will reach out to you and give you your prize. I would also like to urge those persons who have listened to the show and feel as though they've been affected by gender-based violence to reach out to Jamaicans for Justice at 755-4524 or 5 to see how we can assist. And Patrick, do you have anything to say?
Well, tomorrow is International Women's Day, so I invite everyone to join us in the call to promote gender equality tomorrow.
Thank you very much for joining us. This was Let's Talk Justice. I am Jade Williams, Jamaicans for Justice.
Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, the people demand. Right to life and security. Oh, what a joy. Oh, what a peace. How great this country could be. Respecting your rights, respecting human rights. What a wonderful nation this could be. Out of many we are one in a Jamaica. Make it a better place for the boys and girls. Created equal by the creator. For equal rights and opportunities. No to unlawful detention and police brutalization. Class, gender, race or religion.